All right. Hello, everyone, and happy Friday. I'm so glad it's like almost the weekend. And this is my first, every week we go live here on LinkedIn and we talk about all things how to help you to fix your business, to build a better culture, to grow your business. And today I have a friend of mine, a colleague of mine that I met recently. And this is going to be such an amazing conversation and one that small businesses need, which is centered around how to protect your business and the things that you might know to do and maybe might not know what to do. So, thank you for joining me, Jay Razzouk. Did I get that right?
Spot on.
All right. Thank you for joining me here today. Like I said, this is going to be an awesome conversation. I've been so looking forward to this because, as you and I have talked, the topic of protecting your business and doing things right and making sure that your hard work is protected, is something that's near and dear to my soul.
So important.
Um, yeah, so important. And it's something that a lot of people end up shying away from. And the one thing that I always tell my clients when I first start working with them, the two things that you want to invest in are an accountant and a lawyer. And most people look at me like, what? So I'm so happy to have you on the show. And I want to just dive right into it. And I want to let's talk about your background. Like, tell me a little bit about you, how you got started in all of this, and really what makes you different as legal counsel, as a lawyer.
So thank you so much, Theresa, first for having me here. And so for me, yeah, I'm a lawyer, a corporate lawyer, and I started off as a what I call a corporate reform lawyer, working with Fortune 500s, trying to fix them when there'll be these billion-dollar mistakes that you might see in the Wall Street Journal. And I got tired of that though because most of it was in litigation. You almost
Ugh.
have to force people to do what's right. And just see all the money being wasted in the court system. I'm like, there's got to be a better, different way. And I
And
really
how could
wanted,
you get tired of that?
I don't know. I got tired of judges not believing me that this company will go bankrupt or this. You're crazy. And then what do you know? They filed for bankruptcy like 6 months later, but I just got
That
tired.
takes a special person to do that. That takes a gifted person to do that.
Yeah, so I just got tired of coming too late in the game, when huge mistakes already been made. And I wanted to start working with entrepreneurs early on, maybe even before they hit it big, lay down that
Mm,
better legal foundation that would really be sustainable and help their business last forever. So I've been
yeah.
doing that for the past few years, loving it. And, especially niching down, helping coaches and consultants in the online space, especially. And I love working with coaches because you have to get a lot of good input and valuable feedback from them.
Yeah. No, I'm sure. I'm sure. And to go from corporate to what you were doing to working with entrepreneurs, that's like a like change, complete change. So how does it differ? How does it feel or how does it differ like, corporate business versus these small entrepreneurs that are just getting started?
So I sort of see it as a lot of the same principles apply, but now it's simplifying them and make it into really basic steps that they can start doing now to start laying those better habits. And then as they grow, of course, then those things will magnify and get more and more systematized as they get bigger.
Mhm,
But really,
mhm.
it is an application of these overarching principles of best practices that really keep you out of trouble in the long run. It's
Yeah,
and some of those we could talk about if you like. I have like I basically broke it down to 5 things. And
sure. Let's
some of
talk about
them
it.
could be applied right away. One, the first one is having the right structures in place. And what I call the structures is, are you a corporation, LLC, or do you want to just stick it out as a sole proprietor? What are your contracts like? Are they really, giving a good framework for your relationships and intellectual property? All these sort of fall into your framework uh,
Mhm,
or your structures that will protect you. The
mhm.
next one will be your community, making sure you hire, you work with the right people. And I think we were just chatting a little bit about that. If you have the wrong person in place, you could have somebody, the wrong client in your group, it
Oh,
could totally just suck out the energy and everybody gets really annoyed. So you have to be so careful about it. You can have best contract in the world. And if you sign up with the wrong client, it, it's over. It doesn't
yeah.
matter if you have the best terms. Are you going to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars just to prove you were right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you have to hire people, whether they're an employee or it's a contractor that you're working with or a client. You have to hire people and work with people that you align with, like that your values align. And
Hmm.
because you're right, I mean, if you and we were just talking about this, if you have an employee that's working for you and that person is, super toxic, miserable, not doing, causing more problems than anything, like it's going to cost the business so much more money
Hmm.
and maybe not even, a lot of money, but the energy piece is even more expensive, and then the detriment that it ends up doing to the organization. So, all right, so we have right structures, we have the community. So what's number 3?
The right daily actions. So
Okay.
so it actually spells the word scale. So SC, now A, right actions. And this is where it really changes as you become a larger entity, because as you grow, you have to start putting in your policies, your procedures, these sorts of things. Because when it's just you and your business, you might know what to do. But as you hire more people, they need to know what to do, and you need to be consistent. So that's
Mm,
where those things come in place.
all
Then the
right.
next one is I call loss limiters. So this is insurance and or other fancy things, but for most people, get insurance. It could cover you, especially if you have like a property where people work or customers come to. Someone slips and falls, you want that covered. Or if you give advice, it's good to have you protected if you give bad advice.
Nobody ever gives bad advice.
No, nobody's human. And then the last one, this was really important, and I don't think enough people value it. And this is what I call the enlightened mindset.
Mm,
And this is really understanding that deep down, everybody expects to be loved. And if you do love people, treat them right, with the exception of some few people with certain mental health conditions, the average person is going to respond really well to that, going to value the relationship with you, and then will never think to like go find a lawyer to go after you. And that's really key because most people think, oh, if I have a contract and I follow the contract, I'm fine. Or if I just do what the law says, I'm fine. But your clients don't know what the law is. Your employees don't know what the law is. Nobody can read and understand most contracts. At the end of the day, people just have a gut feeling of what is to be loved, and they want that. And when you don't do it, that's when they feel upset, and we'll find a lawyer who will get really creative and figure out what
mm,
law you broke or what terms in the contract you broke. So I
right.
think that's your best protection right there.
That's interesting. So an enlightened mindset. It's funny that, to hear, and I apologize for this in advance, but to hear a lawyer say that that's one of the key things that you want to have is that enlightened mindset. So tell me a little bit more about this. And does this relate to the unbroken mind?
Yeah, it really does. And so Unbroken Minds is a documentary my wife and I have been producing. And so far, we filmed 150 interviews of people who had mental illness or treated. And just one of my big aha moments in it was just how important love is to our human psyche. And, if a child does not get the love the child needs, the child will either grow up really broken, or there was a study done where the kids died if they weren't really loved and cuddled
Mhm.
as infants. So it is critical for us to have this. It's almost as important as the air we breathe and the food we eat. And uh, just to see the effects of, or I should say, not only the effects of people falling apart when not getting love, but also to see the healing that would come about when love is there. And
Mm,
and I begin to realize that love is such a precious resource, and we really need to rethink what our businesses are at times. And our businesses
mm,
really are relationships at its core. I mean, the whole universe, fundamentally, if you break it down, is relationships. We keep splitting the atom, and then we find these particles. We split those particles, and then we find more particles, split them up, and more particles. Really, it just seems everything is made of particles that are held together, that are in relationships, that are in bonds.
Yeah.
This camera I'm speaking through, and this microphone, they exist because matter is held together and in relationship.
Yeah.
And without relationships, we're just isolated, alone, and not accomplishing anything. Nothing has
Mhm.
value without it.
No, and it's interesting your point of, business is really about relationships. I mean, that is something that I mean, the three pillars of what I work in are an aligned strategy, a transformational culture, which has to do with the relationships,
Mm.
and then a relational customer experience. So no matter what you're working in, you're always taking into account and always putting the relationship that you're building with with your customers, with your team, most important. And then with anybody that you work with, like as you say, your community. I mean, it's so key that that's what we need to focus on first. The products and the other stuff is like secondary.
Hmm.
The key is that those relationships that you're building and keeping that in the forefront. So,
That's why we
and
get
it's
along so well.
I know, I was
You're
just
so
gonna
spot on.
I was just gonna say that. But it's so, and I hope that, people that are watching this, and listening to this, because this is also a podcast episode, thinking about and hopefully starting to shift their mindset as far as it relates to, working with a lawyer that has one of your five principles of working with somebody is that enlightened mindset, that relationship that you're building with people. Typically, I don't think that's on the forefront of most people in the legal profession. So that is definitely something that, I hope my listeners are hearing and seeing that, yeah, you find the right person, the right legal counsel who has that at the forefront. I mean, that's going to be key with everything else.
And I've really come to view myself as a lawyer, define myself when I'm doing a good job as a lawyer. I am to relationships what a good doctor is to the human body.
Mm.
And so I want to see my clients having good relationships that will bring in good money for them, that will, um, be a delight to them, because a bad relationship can just ruin your day, your week, make you question why you're even in business in the first place. But the ones that are good when you're seeing difference in the people's lives, or, your business and their business are growing together, that's when life just seems to be at its best.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And I love how you said that, like, and you have it here too, that personalized legal services should enhance your business, not put it out of business. But you're right that and you look at someone's business in the totality of it, including the human factor. So when you're making recommendations or suggestions, or you're putting these things into practice for them or helping them put it into practice, you're not just looking at it like, you know, how many hours am I billing for this? Or I'm just writing a contract, or, I'm just advising them on insurance, but you're looking at the totality of it. And that's
Hmm.
that relationship piece, which is so different. And I think, um, being an entrepreneur and coming out of corporate, um, when I came out of corporate, like I had to relearn I pretty much had to relearn business because I had one mindset, and when I came out and became an entrepreneur, I had to adopt a completely different mindset. And so often you feel like you're alone. So to have a trusted advisor as yourself, I mean, that would make a world of difference because you're trying to guide yourself through all these uncharted waters and all these unknowns, making, so many mistakes that, like I said, to be working with someone like yourself, it's life-changing. So,
Yeah. And I love what you talk about that different mindset you have to have when you leave corporate and now you're in entrepreneurship. And I'm curious what you mean by that, because for me, that also is very true.
people don't well, and so when I left corporate, I was a marketing director and I was a director of operations. So I left corporate, we had our business. My first business was a brick and mortar, and then I started my consulting business at the same time. And I was like, I got this. Like, I've marketed, big pieces of laboratory equipment. I got this. Like, no problem. I did not get it. So that was one of the things is that and it was funny because I didn't really fully understand how to connect. Like I
Mm.
didn't like it was just so different, like basically putting myself out there, and the product that I was selling wasn't, a laboratory refrigerator. It was me and my knowledge, and that took a lot to kind of flip it and understand that, and really like navigate all the limiting beliefs that come up and all
Mm.
the fear and surrounding that. The other thing is that I kept functioning as an employee and not functioning as a CEO. Like I thought I had to be sitting at my desk at 8 a.m., until 5 p.m. And I was taking anything and everything, like, any opportunity that would come my way and just thinking like an employee. And that, I think the first 3 years of my business, that really, like, I suffered from that. So,
And those things I think a lot of people struggle with. I think I went through those things too. I still
it-
do the sit in the chair for hours grind, but I
I
still
know.
like, making things and, you gotta lay that foundation as you grow your business, but
It's funny,
but
a
it's
business
different when you own
coach.
it.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the thing, like, I was always, working so hard to get a raise or to get a promotion or to, have my boss be happy with the project that I was working on or whatever, that, like, I didn't have a boss anymore, I was the boss, and I was the worst boss ever. I was so hard on myself, and, so many I remember I had a business coach, and I'm gonna drop his name here, James Wedmore, and I remember him saying to me, long, long ago, I remember him saying, Theresa, when you become an entrepreneur, you pretty much have to let go of everything you thought you were in order
Mm.
to become who you were meant to be. Because it takes a really special person to go out on their own and do, own their own business.
That's funny. My dad would always say something very similar, that true greatness is being able to, more or less leave who you are today to become something greater tomorrow. So that
Yeah,
really is
yeah.
it. And that's something else for me, I think a mindset shift that I really had too, and or a big epiphany being an entrepreneur is just how much more important you realize are all your relationships. Like every relationship you have is valuable. And you could give value to them, they can give value to you. And it's not such that, okay, I'm alone in my business. No. Call on a friend who's an expert on something, see what they could chip in. And then when they need help, you could chip in. And then when you help them, they could tell other people how you help them, vice versa. You could tell others, and everybody grows together.
Mhm.
And I just
Mhm.
love this aspect of collaboration that you can have as an entrepreneur, where when you're an employee, you're collaborating just with your other employees because you have to. And or
Yeah,
sometimes it's great when you have a good team, but when an entrepreneur, you now can build the relationships you want with the people you want, and it's
absolutely.
powerful.
Absolutely. And in kind of going along with that, one of the things that I did recently, I had somebody go through my strengths finder with me, which I've never had anybody go through my strengths finder test with me. And then relate it back to I've done Myers-Briggs too. And
Mm.
one of the things that because one of my strengths, my top strengths is connectedness. So mine is relationships. See, that's why we get along so well. Um, so he said, you need to create a personal board, which I thought that was interesting. And he said, I'm like a board of directors. And he was like, yeah, people who you have close relationships with, people who like can hold you accountable when you say you're going to do something or you have specific goals or whatever. And he said like 5 people. And, believe it or not, like one of those people is my accountant, like the person who like taught me everything about, finance like early on. Like he's one of the people that's on my board, on my personal board. So, I mean, and then like I have my husband, of course, but and then I have my assistant and then a really good friend of mine. But like if you think about it, I mean, he's somebody who like had taught me how to do my finances, how to like, early on, and still helps me to today. And that's somebody who I'm entrusting to help me go to the next level in my business.
And that is such good advice. And really, and that's another thing as an entrepreneur I really had to embrace, right? Was that we have our limitations. We have our zone of genius, and then there's places where it drops off, and you need to rely on other people who have gone further than you have, or have their zone of brilliance, and work with them. And yeah, maybe that's a good segue to legal, right? Where a lot of people
Oh
try
yeah,
to
I know. We were supposed to be talking about legal.
DIY it.
No, hey, this is a great conversation, and it's all like I said, I think that's why I was so drawn to you, is that, you look at the legal piece so differently than other people. And it's something that a lot of entrepreneurs and small business owners really need, because they're just in a different place, and I think having someone who has the perspective that you have is so important. So let's talk a little bit, since yes, we have to segue into legal. So or segue back. So you
Want to
talked
make sure we give
about,
people what they expect.
yeah, exactly. But we always over deliver on this show. I'm
Exactly.
telling you, we always over deliver. So let me ask you, what are kind of going with along with your scale framework, your, the right structures and community. I know one of the biggest things that I see, biggest mistakes, is a lot of people start a business and they're in business for several years and they haven't set up the structure. They don't have an LLC, or they don't have any of that stuff set up, or they don't have contracts. So,
Mm.
what are the contracts with independent contractors? I know you and I have talked about that, where they work with somebody to have someone do some graphic design for them, and then I've had people who have had the graphic design work stolen from them, and and then they don't get it. So, because there was no independent contractor or no non-disclosure agreement set up. So, let me ask you, what are the top mistakes that you see working with entrepreneurs and small businesses? What are the top mistakes that you see that people make, and what can they do differently?
Mm. So I think there's a whole variety. So first one, let's talk about IP. You're talking about that. That is, and when I say IP, I mean intellectual property, like trademarks, copyrights, patents, trade secrets. Those are the big four, and they're really the heart and soul of most businesses. Like if you're to try to sell your business today, what would the purchaser buy? It's got to be those things. And what happens is we don't understand as entrepreneurs the law and what those are, um, and we do things which undervalue our IP. For example, like trademarks, we might pick a name that, for marketing reasons, works, but it's not going to be protectable under trademark laws. So I see so many people where they go with a name because they're a good marketer, they know what will sell. But when it
Mhm.
comes to legal aspect of it, it is not going to work whatsoever.
I have a
Because they say
client
that,
that just went through that. Yeah.
and yeah, and if they've used that name for a while, their heart is in that name. It's very painful to then be told, you know what, this is not trademarkable. You're going to have to come up with a different name. Or what's worse, someone else has been using that name before you, and you're infringing their trademark if you uh, keep going using it.
Hmm. Wow. Yeah, I have a client that just went through that. They've been using a branded name for something that they created, a product, and went to go get it trademarked. And they were like, this is going to be really difficult to trademark. You might have to rebrand. And they were like, no, we're not rebranding. We're going to try and make this work. So no, trademarks is definitely, and getting those things protected, and understanding, when you name something, that legal side, I think that's a big one. What else do you see a lot of?
I Next one is that, let's talk about contracts. There's a lot of major mistakes people make with contracts. One is they don't put the right business entity in the contract. So let's say I have an LLC and I'm the manager of it, but I sign the contracts with just myself, my name, J Razzouk. Or I might put the name of the business, but I'll sign it as owner. Like, these are all
Mm.
no-nos. You need to have the business be the one that signs the contract, and then you just sign as an officer of it, not as
Mm.
an owner. You formed an LLC because you, as the owner, don't want to be on the hook. Your LLC is on the hook, not you as the owner.
Wow, I never knew that. Now that's something I've never known. Because
I see.
most people do sign their name and they put owner.
Yeah, owner or founder. Or I see
Mm.
people where I had one client, she signed a lease agreement and signed it with her DBA, but then signed as herself and then owner. And unfortunately, I couldn't argue, oh, you sued the wrong person. You should have sued her LLC. It really looked like my client was the one that signed a contract and it was her personally on the hook.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. And that's like I said, I mean, I do that myself. Now I'm gonna do that differently, but I do
Yeah.
that myself, and I have an LLC where I've actually signed, my name and then have put owner afterward, and wow, I did not know
90,
that.
90 to 95% of all contracts I audit make that mistake.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's why I put that one really high up. And maybe you might even put the wrong name of the other party, for example. If you're signing up with somebody, like, you need to make sure, should it be their business? Should it be them as individuals? Do you have the right person in the agreement? And this one of these details that we don't spend a lot of time in or thinking about, but it has big implications if the agreement has to get enforced.
Mm.
Now, another major mistake, and we were talking a little bit about independent contractors. I think most people believe that, this is America. If two of us want to say this is an independent contractor agreement, then, one of the worker is an independent contractor. But it doesn't work that way. Uh, in in reality, we have uh, tons of different tests. It's a mess. So each state might have its own laws. The federal government has multiple tests depending on the scenario, and whatever the issue is, the law will run through a bunch of factors and say, okay, is this person really an independent contractor or are they an employee? And there's big ramifications here because the government gets a lot more money out of you if your worker is an employee. And you have to withhold taxes, you have to pay their FICA taxes, you have to pay into workers' compensation and all these other benefits. So the government wants to have as big of a pool as possible and also says it wants to protect workers, make sure their rights are protected. And which means now the government is becoming more and more aggressive in making sure you don't misclassify your workers
Mm.
when they should be, let's say, independent. When your so-called independent contractor is really an employee.
An employee. And so many things have, along those lines, so many things have changed within the past year or so, even classifications of employees, and then also, the W-2 that someone fills out and their deductions and things. Like, there have
Mhm.
just been so many things that have changed, and I do, you really have to pay attention, or you gotta invest and hire someone who knows, an accountant or a lawyer who knows and can help, guide you. Because I had a client several years ago who kept saying that they had this contractor and they were a 1099 and they actually weren't. They were actually an employee. And then it ended up with lots of issues. I've also had people who have missed, and I know it might be state to state is different, but they classify somebody as exempt and they're really
Mm.
non-exempt, even if they're full-time. So that becomes an issue too, that they
Mhm.
have to go back. And I've actually had, a couple clients that have had to go to litigation with employees that had left with, back money that was owed to them. So
Yeah, and if your employee leaves on bad terms, it's very likely, like in California, it's almost guaranteed they'll talk to a lawyer. And what is the lawyer going to do? If they're employee, yeah, they should not have been exempt. Or if they're an independent contractor, oh, they should have been an employee. It's almost malpractice if the plaintiff attorney doesn't assert these things.
mhm. Oh,
And
no,
y-
definitely.
and yeah, you're right. Now you're paying interest, you're paying back payments, you're paying penalties. not just to the worker, but maybe also to the government.
Yeah. It's crazy. And it's just, I mean, it's just one simple, like I said, having that trusted resource that you can go to and you can talk to about these things and make sure that you're doing them right. And I mean, I had to go back. This was when I first started my business and like reread Pennsylvania state law about, employment law and wages and then just read up on it and what the differences were. And it can get confusing and it can get
Yeah.
overwhelming, especially if you're trying to build your business and you're worried about just bringing revenue in and then to deal with all these things, it's like it can just be a
Yeah.
lot.
And as you mentioned, the law has been changing in this space a lot. Even just the past 10 years, more and more states have adopted very stringent tests when it comes to whether or not someone is an employee or an independent contractor. And the law starts off with the presumption they're an employee, and you have to go through all these hoops and hurdles to show they're actually a 1099 independent contractor.
Contractor.
And a lot of people think it's just in California. But guess what? The test California follows might be applied in as many as I've seen up to 33 states.
Wow.
20 to somewhere between 20 to 33 states follow this test. So that's 3 out of 5 states in the country.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
See, this is why it's important. This is why I always tell my clients, invest in a good lawyer and an accountant, because these are the
Yeah.
things that, because even like with Facebook, like, I always tell people it's so hard to keep up with all the changes on Facebook. When it comes to this kind of stuff, it's so hard to keep up with it. But if you have somebody that you trust, and somebody
Mhm.
that knows this, it makes things so much easier.
And
So
maybe
go ahead.
that's a good segue to something I've been struggling with, because I know that there is a difficulty in getting access to information.
Mhm.
And even when I have clients come to me, I give them the information. I would say, like, here's 10 guidelines how not to go wrong when hiring your independent contractors. They still don't look at it.
Yeah.
And it's human nature, and it's also the nature of being an entrepreneur. You don't have time to soak in information to try to understand it. So there's this gap. So how does an attorney bridge the gap between helping you understand and implement what you need to do and you having the time and ability and mental headspace to figure it out? And this is where I've really now come to be a believer in templates. And it says of using
Mm.
templates as this delivery device where the attorney would create the legal framework, let's say, by which you can operate safely within the law, and then you just follow the template. So like it's a contract, your 1099 agreement. It will have what you need in there to make sure you don't, misclassify your employee, and that you like get this. A lot of people don't know this. In the past 2 years, Colorado and Nevada have passed statutes that make it so that you can land in prison if you have the wrong type of non-compete agreement in your contract.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I
Wow.
know at least about Colorado and Nevada. Who knows what other states? So
Yeah, it's true. That's true. So, when you work with people, have you started to provide templates for them to work with?
that's what I I become a full believer in this, just seeing what's happening with my clients, experiencing how is the best way I can help them. Really, that's what they need. You know, they need to hire somebody. Okay, you're not going to want to sit through an hour-long video, but here's a template of the contract that will, if you just follow these terms, you'll be good. So it's
Mm,
this quick deployment of going from having a need to hire somebody to doing it the right way.
interesting. So, do you do when you work with people, do you have templates for um different types of things? So, one would be like a non-disclosure or non-compete or whatever. One would be the contractor agreement. Like, so you create templates, individual templates for people.
That's right. So what I'm doing is I'm building out a whole package that would have everything that coaches would need. I'm sorry, with coaches and consultants, people in the online space who
Mhm.
have overlapping needs, and then so like there's an independent contractor agreement that would have uh, terms to protect confidentiality of information, like your client list. Then there's terms that will help them not compete with you. But I think non competes are dead. The law is getting harder and harder, and it's more dangerous to have them in your contracts. but then there's other approaches you can take, which then I follow in my contract. And it'll lead to a better agreement anyway. Or sorry,
Mhm.
not agreement, a better relationship.
Relationship.
Because if you hand your worker this contract with all these one-sided terms, and no matter what you win, and they can't work for anybody for 2 years after working with you. Number one, they'll be crazy to work with you, and number two, when the relationship ends, they're going to feel like a dog trapped in the corner.
Yeah.
And what do they do then when they feel like they're trapped in the corner? That's when they go talk to the lawyer, and the lawyer will figure out that they should have been an employee, and now you're the one in the doghouse.
And it all goes downhill from there.
Yeah. So build a good relationship. Have a contract that's fair, that makes both of you feel good, that lays the foundation for a healthy relationship, and one that will, hopefully be a relationship that'll be beneficial for both of you long term.
Wonderful. So if you, outside of what you just said, um, to kind of round out this conversation, if somebody is listening to this and they're like, I need to find someone to work with, what would be the biggest piece of advice to get them started to go looking for someone to help them with these things? Besides yourself, of course. But I mean, like if they wanted to find somebody local, like what are a couple things that a couple pieces of advice that you can give them to get them started?
I think it takes two things. You're going to need, in a sense, two attorneys. Sometimes you'll be lucky, it could be one. Is you need an attorney that will be making excellent templates in your space. And
Mhm.
this is a new thing, and lawyers are picking up on that. They really need to niche down and become an expert in one particular industry or for one particular person or client. And so then they will make templates fitting the needs of that class of people. And then you will need an attorney in your state who knows the laws in your state, knows what's legal, what's not, what will end you in prison, what won't, what will be a worker in your state or an employee versus not, to double check these templates. But if you have good starting templates, then that attorney review should be a lot quicker, a lot cheaper. And in the long run, you end up with a template that one attorney spent, like for me, I spend 100 plus hours on my template. So you have a 100-hour plus template within a couple hours of attorney review. And I think that gives you maximum protection and your best bang for the buck. Because otherwise, if you're paying your attorney to draft something from scratch, they spend 10 hours, that's a couple hundred or a couple thousand, $3,000, and they only spent 10 hours on it, as opposed to, 100 plus if attorney making the template was really focusing hard to come up with the best template ever.
Yeah. That's what I went through. My first one I ever had, and this was like 10 years ago, my first contractor, or my first services agreement. He wrote it custom, and he didn't really understand my business, and he didn't really want to understand it. And I ended up paying a ton of money for something that was so over legal, like that people would look at it and be afraid to sign it. Like, and it was, I mean, I think that was one of the mistakes that I made. So I like what you have to say. I mean, first and foremost, if anybody, for anybody that's listening to this, first and foremost, you got to find someone who cares about the relationship. I think that's the
Mhm.
first piece. And also is someone who is knowledgeable, particularly about, in your state, in your area, and wants to, learn about what you do so that they can do the best service for you. So awesome.
That's well said.
Awesome.
And I think the younger attorneys are at least the ones I know, are very relationship based. And, if you find a younger attorney, they're looking for a long term friend, and you
Yeah.
get good value out of that.
Yeah. No, I would agree. I mean, not that like the older ones aren't good,
No.
but it's definitely a new way of looking at things, new perspective.
And that's
100%.
the issue. The law has to be rethunk right now, and that's what's happening. You can't do law as usual. And it used to be you were a good lawyer if you asserted your client's rights to the max and made sure they got the most money possible, and the relationship wasn't usually a part of the formula. And
Mhm.
and as you mentioned, you have the attorney who put everything in the contract and made it super scary, and that used to be what's considered, good lawyering. and it takes someone who's brave to um, break the current mold and say like what really is valuable for the client.
Mhm. Well, history wasn't made on people who followed the rules. So history was made on people who broke them. So, no, I totally, totally agree with you. Well, this has been a phenomenal conversation. And before I ask you 3 like quick questions, is there anything else that you want to add? Anything that you want to tell people before I ask you these 3 questions?
I'm ready for the questions.
You ready for the questions?
Yeah.
All right. First one. How did you meet your wife, Wendy?
Um, Actually at a church hike. And it was good
Oh.
because I was being strategic and I thought, where would I meet someone who shares my values and likes getting outdoors. I was like, I'll try church hike. So my second church hike, I met her. So it was a good
Oh, nice.
strategy.
Nice. And I've heard that you guys, I've met Wendy once, but I've heard from a lot of people that have worked with you that you guys are a really great team. So that's awesome. Um,
I'm
all
very
right.
blessed.
So what is one of the most interesting things that people might not know about you? Something like I shared with you, mine is most people don't know that when I was 18, I wanted to be my dream was to be a fly girl on In Living Color, the show.
My crazy aspiration, and friends who grew up with me know this well, was that I was going to be the president of the United States. And I was a
Mm.
total geek on everything presidential. And then my favorite car, everybody said, "Oh, I like Lambos, I like this, I like that." And I was like, "Well, mine is the presidential limo." But I've since changed.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's a Cadillac.
Exactly. The beast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. What last question. What are you most grateful for?
I'm just really grateful for the that kind of what would be my board, my advisory board, beginning with my wife Wendy, who's been just pivotal in helping me even understanding love and relationships. A lot of that is thanks to her too. And then just the coaches and people I've worked with in the past year or so who have um really just started with helping me to appreciate the differences and be more brave to not just be like every lawyer, but say, yeah, hey, I think you're onto something. Keep going forward and pioneer something new. So I really appreciate all those people who've been there for me.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, this has been such a great conversation. I mean, there's so I was taking notes while you were talking. I mean, your scale method with the right structure, the community, the actions, the lost limiters, which is like your insurance, the enlightened mindset, to how important relationships are in business. I love learning about your documentary. I mean, that's phenomenal and something, interviewing these people. And we talked about, helping people to see, that knowing that people need love and helping people to see that they are loved. And I mean, it's just people need that so much right now with everything that's going on in the world and everything that we've been through. And I can just say, I am very grateful for meeting you and for, doing this interview. And every time I talk to you, we have such great conversations. And I will say this from an outside perspective, you are changing the world. You are absolutely changing the world with what you're doing. And, as a colleague and as somebody who is trying to disrupt my own industry, keep going with what you're doing because so many people need your help. So many people. And like I said, you are changing the world. So keep going because the world needs it.
I'm so grateful for and the people like you have encouraged this and given me a platform to share it.
Awesome. So where can people find you? So where can people find you? Do you have like a free download that people can go to your website or where can they learn more about you?
I like being on social media and just find me on Facebook and LinkedIn. I am, as far as I know, the only Jay Razzouk on the planet. So you won't have to worry about finding somebody else. It's going to be me. And I'd love to connect. Happy to do contract audit, give you an idea of, how does it compare to what I call my golden standard. give you an idea of, if you need to make changes.
Awesome. And your website is razzlaw.com, R-A-Z-Z law.com.
If you want to speak with me as an attorney, that would be razzlaw.com. And then
Okay.
the legal coaching business, if you're interested in like templates, learning more about that, it's proscalelegal.com.
Okay, perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. As I said, this was such a wonderful question. And anybody who is listening or who is watching this live, I would love to hear. I would love for you to post a comment, and I would love for you to hear what was the most valuable thing in this episode, because there was a lot. There was a lot. And this is something that so many people shy away from. So I would love to know what you found most valuable and what was your biggest aha moment and takeaway. So until next week, I will see you all very soon. Take care of each other. And thank you again, Jay. It was an honor to have you on. I am so, so, so grateful. And I, look forward to doing more with you.
Thank you so much, Theresa, and likewise.
All right. All right, everybody. Take care.
Bye-bye.